Hello and welcome. I'm Uwe Schulte, your host of this webcast. We want to talk about supply chain transformation, the loop from physical to digital today. And it is a special webcast, and I'm very pleased to have two experts with us, and we will be discussing the issues to some extent. But of course, we will not be able to cover all the different aspects. And you are absolutely welcome to raise questions throughout this webcast, and we would be very pleased to engage in a discussion with you, the audience. But before we do that, let me explain a few logistics items. So first of all, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please feel free to do so and use the bottom left-hand corner for that. We will be watching that and respond to your questions as appropriate within the flow of the webcast. And you can download the presentation on the next box. And if at any point in time you would like to have a full view of the presentation screen, you can click on the four arrows on the top, and you will then have a full view. And if you click on that again, then you're back to this format. We are recording this webcast, and if you like it or you think a colleague of yours might be interested, please share that link with them. From tomorrow, this webcast will be available on demand. If you are in this webcast and are earning CPE credits, please register with your email. And then throughout the webcast, 3 times a pop-up will appear, and by clicking on it, you will earn the credit, and that will go until the end of the webcast. Please understand that this is only available at the live webcast and not during streaming on demand. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our two experts. First of all, Michael Gienert. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, Uwe. Hello, everyone.
And also Matthias Graefe from IBM. Hello, Matthias, and welcome to you as well.
Hello, everyone.
So before we get into the discussion, let me just briefly introduce a little bit of the background of Michael and Matthias. Michael has over 30 years of experience in logistics and supply chain management in the process industry, as well as in the automotive and logistics services. He held several operational and strategic management positions, both in local as well as in regional global functions. Michael is the founder of Vienio, a consultancy offering diagnostics, training, and coaching in the field of supply chain management. And Matthias is the transformation executive responsible to lead IBM's global supply chain into the cognitive area. And I'm sure we will hear more about this throughout the meeting. Matthias runs a global team of supply chain experts, agile scrum masters, data scientists, and artificial intelligence developers. Prior to his transformation role, Matthias gained execution experience in multiple supply chain operational leadership roles in Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe. Matthias obtained a master in mechanical engineering and business administration at the Technical University of Darmstadt in Germany. So I'm afraid you have a little bit of a German overkill in this webcast, but let's hope that the accent is the only thing you have to endure, and that the expertise will compensate you for that. Talking about expertise, Michael, you know, my supply chain experience lies a few years back. What do you say is changing entering the digital world now?
Thank you, Uwe. Well, you could say digital is not new, transformation is not new, supply chain is not new. So what's new? We believe digital supply chain transformation is not about whether or when, it's about how. And maybe even more about where and why. We see right now a lot of fireworks in a broad scale of corporations trying to respond to the transformation pressure from competition, and maybe even not from competition or those that they know as competitors, but those that are completely new to the field or even transform the business that they are in. And everyone will understand that has implications of how we operate supply chains. Actually, also, many leaders seem to be overwhelmed, at least over coffee, they admit, and maybe even overcharged with the scope and the speed of change, sometimes even of the potential change or the perceived change at the horizon. What seems a big need is compasses for pathfinders. In other words, providing insights for developing effective roadmaps. And we're going to elaborate a bit about what that means. So if you allow a bit of a structuring chart here is if we talk about digital transformation, digital supply chain transformation, then it's certainly more than just the development of a new toolkit for practitioners at the workplace. There's two sides of it, and the dynamics come into play once two fundamentals are combined. A strategic thrust with an eye on higher customer centricity, enhanced customer experience. This may include a vision of a so-called end-to-end supply chain connectivity. So digital transformation of supply chains are combined and corresponding to enterprise strategy that leverages digital technologies and data. And secondly, capturing efficiency drivers with new technologies where possible. We would even say wherever possible, because we find all kinds of applications almost no matter where. And the digitization is the adaptation or increase in use of digital technology across the board. Now, pairing efficiency and effectiveness makes the digital supply chain transformation a real bold game changer that is at least not what we only expect. We are seeing it already. And while we talk about the true impact on managing our supply chains, and we've always transformed them, even continuous improvement may be called a transformation, but here we talk about much more fundamental changes. So if you look at what is affected when we manage supply chains, of course, we determine supply chain strategies on the basis of understanding business strategy. Once we have supply chain strategies well articulated, we will design or adapt the supply chain network, the infrastructure, in other words. And upon the right infrastructure, we will design and determine the right processes that support the infrastructure. In other words, the nodes in our network, the factories, the warehouse, the distribution centers, the satellite storage points, suppliers, customers alike. And only once we have the right processes in support of an infrastructure, in support of strategy, we will be able to determine what the capability needs are for our people and technology resources. So if you pair that with what we see as the digital transformation management, a part of which is supply chain as the backbone of the business, then it is quite handy to look at the strategic, tactical, and operational implications. And here, a number of things come into play. First of all, we all talk about business models changing, and that may be even the classic industries, whether it's healthcare, retail, whether it's consumer business, doesn't really matter. And the market intelligence, and at the same time, new competitors, not even mentioning necessarily the Amazon effect in B2B2C, is affecting business strategies, which, of course, in turn, will affect how we design our supply chains to respond. I don't go through all the bullet points, but from demand sensing and using platforms for bidding and contracting our suppliers and service providers, throughout tracking and tracing, a lot of technologies even being in place for long, I think what is really a fundamental shift then is if we add the broad scale of true of the true technical capabilities and applications. And to highlight a couple, which all have in a combined version even the power to change the business fundamentally and how we operate supply chains. It's distributed ledger technology, blockchain, in other words. It's all the implications of omni-channel distribution, a different way of dealing with our trade channel partners, and maybe even they become competitors to our own business, which we see in a number of industries. Supported also recently by the means of the emphasis on circular economy and sustainability. We are looking at opportunities to better track and trace and make full transparent our supply chain to support improving the supply chain footprint on the economy and the ecological consequences of it. Now, whether we name IoT, AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., all of these are individual playing fields, a lot of which are piloted and a lot of which already are in fact in place. And we will hear a little bit more from Matthias talking about his experiences. I think though, what practitioners really need is an overview and a good roadmap that starts to sort them, help them sorting out how to move forward and to have a more effective way of applying these digital technologies in transformation of their supply chains. Also, and even moreover, I would say, looking at each of these technologies individually is already quite a challenge along the supply chain, along the value chain. But the combination of a number of these, or in future maybe all of them, raises a couple of other questions as well. So I just mentioned security. How do we protect our data in collaborating along the chain? Governance principles. How are we deciding on the business rules of engagement if standards are provided or being developed for entire industries? And when we say industries, of course, along a chain, let's say tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers and downstream trade channel partners, they must not necessarily belong to one industry anymore. And that is, I guess, probably also addressing some of the big challenges that we see in huge conglomerates trying, for example, blockchain and provenance applications along the chain. I'd like to also emphasize on one of the big challenges, and that is to stay consistent from strategy to action. The role of business process architecture, business process management, and of course data management will become very prominent and is already becoming very prominent. We believe even a number of companies are seeing the ugly consequences, if you allow, for not being well focused on the homework that addresses master data management, consistency of data in the past. A bit more on, if you like, the ironical side of it, it has hardly been a good career path for people to become a leader in a company if you were expert in data and master data management. Probably, that's a bet, that may even change in future. It's a forgotten diligence, and homework, a homework burden that for many of those who actually are very much to the detail and to the ingredients of Internet of Things, manufacturing 2.0 or Industry 4.0 that understand how difficult it is to get to the transactional data and the master data and to make them available and useful. Now, I'd like to close this opening with another thought, and that is an observation, if you like, from many talks over the last 2 years in particular, and that has to do with the question of why. why are we digitizing? Why are we digitally transforming supply chains? A lot of answers, actually, if you look at it, is testing, piloting, trialing, and very often a response seems to be more, we do it because we can, rather than we do it because we know. This is a bit of a dilemma that we also will address in our council, where we want to help practitioners, actually practitioners helping themselves from experience of each other, of how we best tame the creativity of board levels, if you like, asking the questions of, hey, how are we doing on blockchain? How are we doing on 3D printing? And we rather are after developing a good roadmap, which makes a lot of sense and effectively supporting the business, than trialing a lot. Why? We come to that, I think, later. It's also costing money. And we see some of the projects right now that are being stalled or even put on ice just because they don't bring the return right away. And the council will be the forum for supply chain leaders to exchange experience about handling these desires and to equip oneself with the background and change challenges that go along with it. With this, I would like to hand over to Matthias and have him share his insight.
Michael, before you do that, thank you.
Sure.
You've given us a lot of food for thought in terms of the structure and the elements of what we're facing. And you mentioned the council, which you have agreed to be the council director of. That council came from requests from our members of the conference board saying, these things are coming left, right, and center to us. It is difficult to discriminate between hype and practical applications. And what we are trying to do and what we're trying to achieve in the very well-established format of a conference board council with a moderating council director, bring practitioners together and share under Chatham House rules what works and actually what doesn't work. So thank you for getting us started, and we'll, I think by listening to Matthias now, we will see that practitioners have a lot to say. And Matthias, just give us a brief overview of where you and IBM have come from and where you're moving to.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. Yeah, in the spirit of that council idea, I would like to share with you the transformation we went through, a digital transformation. Uwe said it at the beginning. I'm responsible for the digital transformation of IBM's own supply chain, hardware supply chain of supercomputers, computers, and storage products. And a very typical supply chain when it comes to challenges. But looking at our transformation, and I would like to spend the next 10 minutes on sharing with you what we have done, what worked, what didn't work, and what we are challenges we are facing. I look at our transformation into 3 phases, right? And by now we really define those phases and communicate those phases accordingly. Looking back at the very beginning of our transformation, we spent a lot of time and effort on harmonizing our supply chain, right? We harmonizing our data, our processes, a globally integrated enterprise and a globally integrated supply chain with it. And a lot of it is still ongoing. As you can see the chevron on the bottom of this chart, right? We are still working on harmonization, working on cleansing our data and building the basis for intelligence. But then 5 years ago, when I took this job, we recognized that we have to do something on top, right? We cannot wait until we have all the data harmonized, and we want to have now the insights of the data we do have. And that's where we started a project which we call Transparent Supply Chain, and really looked at how can we situationally support our people with the right information. Right? The third phase, which we started 1.5 years ago, and which we really tops down also communicated like this, is we want to become a cognitive supply chain. What is the difference, right? Really Different than in the second phase, we are not only kind of improving our processes a little bit, making them a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more faster. Now we are thinking about like how can we reimagine those processes, knowing and having done a lot of smaller pilots with these technologies. How can we really redesign our workflows? How can we build in intelligence into our workflows and learn with our activities? So I will talk a little bit more about it. The really comes down is we set ourselves a goal, right? A North Star, and our North Star is to what we understand our digital transformation around is to really have 100% of our workflows in our supply chain be either automated, where it makes sense, or augmented by intelligent machines. What do I mean with that? Right? Really started recognizing that what we've done over years was to really focus on this perfect world process, and we had too many surprises, right? And in all honesty, if the process is working as expected, as we defined it in our ERP, in our logistics and shop floor control systems, we don't really have a lot of need for help, right? But digital support and digital augmentation really comes in when we have those surprises, and we have a lot of them, right? So we started with creating this identification and alerting of situations to say like, hey, something is going as not expected, so we need to react, right? We need to take action and adjust. And that was where we didn't want to talk so much about KPIs. We really talked about pulse points, ask our best people, so how do you identify that something is going different than expected? Because as we know, our supply chain is not a human-made canal, right? It's more like a whitewater, as you can see it here, right? But then our people told us pretty fast, so thanks for sending me alerts, right? And they're getting smarter and smarter, but help me in really getting the relevant data together so I can understand the situation and really get to the next best action. And that's where we started the second phase. And by the way, that was a key phase because when we really started with our first activities, we called that project even control tower, supply chain control tower, right? And first of all, our people hated it, right? They don't want to be controlled. And they said like, hey, what you work on with your traffic lights on an executive level, that's not how we make our decisions on the base, right? And so that's where design thinking really helped us big time. We defined personas and said like, how can we help people in the different situations they are in? Because decisions are made everywhere in the supply chain. So how can we enable and augment them to make better decisions? And that's what we have done, right? But pretty fast, we also recognized that decision-making itself is not done by single people, right? So that's where we recognize we need to give them an environment to collaborate, right? And of course, our new hires, right, they gave us the hint, so why are we not using chat rooms, right? And we have done that, right? So we really brought people better together, getting away from emailing and telephone calls, right? More into that modern chat environment. And that's where we recognized, wow, now not only that people can work better, faster together and across time zones, now we are digitizing the way we solve problems. And by the way, the decisions we are making, because we ask our people to also document what decisions are made and then kind of correlate it to the information, the structured information we have. And that really led us into learning, right? Because now the machine could read these digitized discussions, the way we solve problems, and can come back and say like, hey, we had a similar problem before. Here are the people who helped at that time. Here are the key questions to ask, right? And here's the playbook to solve such a kind of a problem in the best way, right? And that really led to the tool set we provided them, and it's really threefold, right? One is, as I mentioned, these pulse points to indicate, hey, something is going as not expected. So you need to react, right? And getting better and better of pulse points. And we also drop pulse points when we recognize, wow, this alert is not really leading into something, right? But then it ended up in bringing people together in these discussion environments, in those chat rooms, right, to solve a problem. And then with it, learn with each single situation we have, right? And while we're not talking about big data, we are collecting every single day activities our people are doing and how they solve situations. And now we have really an overview of what is happening, right? By the way, we are also by now recording most of our operations meetings with the allowance of the members, right? And really digitize that information too if we have, for example, local meetings in sites, manufacturing sites. But then the third component is this, what we call ask what's in our AI environment. We said we are a little bit impatient. We don't want to wait until our machine gets to know about all the situations we're in and learning with us. We said like we pull a few of our best people aside and pre-train questions, typical questions, right? And this really helps, and it goes in steps, right? It helps people to that they can ask questions, and more knowledge is built up in that environment, and the knowledge is democratized, right? So we recognize that this is really a very powerful combination of help, augmentation of our people to make better and faster decisions. We see that how much faster now and how much more fact-based we are solving situations. We see like which situations are repeating and close them or improve them. And of course, again, we build with every situation more knowledge and build an asset as itself, a digital asset for our supply chain up there. So with that, I think you have an overview of where we are currently and what we have done so far.
Thank you so much, Matthias. It is very encouraging listening to you. An old guy like me in the supply chain is always, when I see words like AI and machine learning and all of that, it's difficult to connect it with the real world and how it could work. And sometimes one can even be a little bit intimidated because things are changing so fast and so many things come up. I think you've just given a wonderful example how talking about the real stuff between ourselves can help, so we don't have to listen to consultants or academics or people who think they know better. To listen to people who actually do it is very encouraging. So thank you very much for sharing that. I would like to come back to Michael because something resonated with me when you spoke, and this data thing. It is fascinating. I remember that almost 15 years ago, my CFO came into my office. I was at the time the head of global procurement, and he said, "I'm sure all your suppliers are doing such and such." And I said to him, "Look, I would love to know who all our suppliers are because the coding is so bad, we can't even consolidate the data." And it is a bit frightening, I would say, that 15 years later, we seem to be still talking about the same sort of things. Michael, is that the main obstacle, or are there other obstacles to go about it?
Thanks, Uwe. And I believe it's going to be a fundamental challenge, which kind of falls back on the feet of supply chainers and, in principle, the business. And if you allow for the comparison, so as long as you have a manual tool, you will not miss power supply. So as long as you can fix things with a hammer and whatever, a screw, then you don't miss power supply. As soon as you jump to the next level of tools enabled with power, then of course you need to have a power plug everywhere, or at least access to it. Now, if you allow this comparison, then it is similar with data. The new oil, as is also called, I believe. And the fact that we both remember the early days, and we have always talked about master data and how important it is, not about product master data only, but also about customer master data, supplier master data, planning master data, and transactional data that need to be cleaned up. And Matthias was emphasizing on it. I think all that comes back, which in essence means something else for building the capability. I guess the audience has probably also listened in between what Matthias and I were saying. You can talk about the technologies, but what we're really emphasizing, and I thank you, Matthias, is the people aspect, the organizational aspect, and how to build and provide capabilities that enable people to use the technology and then make it meaningful, so to speak, if that responds to your question, Uwe.
Yes, I would like to interrupt our floor a little bit because we have a question from Paul here. He said, and I think this is for you, Matthias, can you give us some examples of what issues get fixed in the IBM resolution room and what roles of people get together to this dedicated support?
Yeah, and sure. The by now, pretty much all the resolution activities in our organization end up in resolution rooms, right? That is from we have a supply constraint. We identify the risk, right? Again, we have an alert that we have a projected late shipment to a customer. We have an alert of indications of quality issues, right? Those are kind of typical examples. And this is where very cross-functional teams come together, right? Depending on the situation. And by the way, there was a lot of learning on our side to see who is pulled into these resolution rooms. We didn't know that before even, right? And that gave us as a transformation team, the opportunity to provide the data better for this audience, right? So we recognized like who is usually pulled in. And the system, of course, as it's digitized, learns with it and says like, okay, here are the people I would suggest to be pulled in for this delivery issue, maybe a damage identified, or in our case, when we have our smart sensors, that there was a tilt recognized during our shipment, right? And which team comes together, right? So these are kind of the typical groups, but I think we are really trying to even have planning S&OP meetings, right, in there, because it's a way not only to solve situation specifics, right, but also then to digitize the decision making, right? Important is we didn't find out yet how the machine could recognize whether the decision which was made was good, bad, or okay, right? I think the complexity is extreme. So we didn't find out a way to say like this decision relates to this KPI and that's why it was a good one, right? So we asked the human being to go back in, the human to come back in and say like, hey, and we defined captains, domain captains, to really identify these resolution rooms were best of a kind, or again, they were okay, right? So that the machine can take that again when it comes to a recommendation. It says like, hey, this is these are the people who can help you, or again, this is even the best next step for you.
Michael, when I listen to you, I'm wondering, some people will be very open to this sort of new approach, but other people will be pretty hesitant. You know, you talked about that, you called it the control tower, and then people said, but I don't want to be controlled, I want to be helped. That cultural change, can you say something about that?
To me, right? Yes, that is, I think this is very important that from the very beginning, by the way, what we did, the first step we did is we identified processes which are mainly rules-based, and which we want to automate, right? So people are afraid of losing their jobs. So they should have a very clear understanding. Here are processes which will be automated in the future. The other part is a lot of our processes, what I described here also, are more augmentation, right? These are decision makings where the human being is doing making the decision, right? And will make the decision, right? Because it's very complex. There is more risk assessment in there. But again, we want to augment. So we always positioned this transformation as an augmentation to our people to make better decisions. That was one thing. The other thing was we recognized that transformation today, in our opinion, runs differently. It's not anymore like in the past that you had an idea about your process, then you go to the IT team, and then you say like, can you do it or can you not do it? I think in these days, our domain people, so supply chain people, they need to understand what is possible with these technologies, right? So we gave training for all indirect people in our supply chain organization around analytics, around AI, around Internet of Things, and around blockchain, right? So that people need to understand these technologies as a base, right? And then they can develop their ideas. So that's one other part, to take them with you, right? And at the end, it is really, you have to be very careful of how you implement it. For example, in the very beginning, we told our AI system, Watson, don't create any answers, just understand the questions and deliver what our best people tell you, right? Because the first funny answer you create, you will lose the full transformation play, right? So go in steps, right? That was what we learned. And then listen to your users. On this advisory, our first attempt was, I ask a question and it's like Alexa or Siri, like there comes the answer. Our people always questioned the answers. If you get just the answer. What we did then is we provided all the related information, more or less the old world. This is what we ask our best people. What would you look at when you have such a question or question family? And we trained that, right? So that now every supply chain professional can make their own picture of the situation. So they can overrule the system, right? And it's important that they understand the situation. And we are happy by now that our people didn't accept it to just get the answer, because we don't want to lose them or let them stop thinking, right? And just take the answers. So they still look at base information. Of course, the system recognizes, hey, I know what you will ask most probably as next answer, because when you ask that answer, that's the next probable answer. So the system can provide more information already. But again, at the end, it's the human who makes those kind of augmented decisions.
Thank you so much, Matthias. And I would like to thank Paul as well for raising the question, because by that exchange, we of course get more to the nitty-gritty stuff that everybody is really interested in. So I would encourage you to follow Paul Maddy's example and type a question into the chat box. But now let's get really back to Michael. This time I mean it. The people aspect that Matthias has just mentioned, I think, is very much on your mind as well, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what Matthias described very nicely, and I think with a lot of insight, maybe even recognizing what other people in the audience have experienced, is the fact that you have to deal with the flip side of the transformation from a technology perspective. In a way, it reminds me of what around the year 2000, a lot of companies expected, or even before, of course, with ERP systems, that a system implementation solves the problem on the processes. Well, you answer this question, I think it didn't really, yeah. And we believe we need to take care of making the affected people the involved people. And Matthias described it nicely. In order to stay involved, you need to be capable to stay involved. And in other words, that all addresses the fundamental principles, I think, leveled up to a new level with regard to change management. It's not a fluffy thing. It will be involving good understanding of the future way of working and the details of the technology in order to describe a desired state for future that people can identify with. And I was, from previous discussion, Matthias, I was very impressed by the fact that your key users and power users that work hand in hand and educate and train your augmented intelligence, Watson, are quite keen and enthusiastic about doing so, because at the end they are the ones making decisions, and they get help, and that from own contribution. So that is one thing. But let me even go back one step. For some of the listeners here in our webcast, it may be even a state in a discussion of which route should we go and where to emphasize in terms of digital transformation, or which technological solutions we are emphasizing, focusing on. And then also what we find quite a concern, and maybe really a big hurdle in the transformation journey, is the cultural aspects. So if there is only enthusiasm in the room, like we just go for it, or everything is feasible if the will is there, then you may end up in this cultural or organizational dilemma, which is, if you're not for it, digital transformation, then you're probably against it. So I think what we see is a lot of companies have to pay attention to balancing out concerns as well as opportunities, without saying blindly, we just hop on any bandwagon that we can find, as long as there is a D word in it, which stands for digital. And that, I think, requires a lot of leadership attention, with the right insight of understanding the various technologies that we addressed and listed earlier. So the capability part, the development of capabilities, is very much at our heart of moving forward, because an automated supply chain is likely not on the horizon for us. It is the role of the people in the supply chain and the technology that will change. And we're not talking science fiction, to say the least. It's all happening already.
Thank you, Michael. This, I think, is a very important point to get us back to the ground of reality. And this is what the whole thing here, the discussion we're having and the discussion the Council will have in the future, is all about, to really seize the opportunities, but with a realistic approach. I must say that I had recently a couple of conversations with supply chain experts around this, practitioners, and I was amazed about the discrepancy between what we see here and what IBM is obviously, for example, already engaging in, and what actually happens on the ground on many supply chains. So one practitioner said to me, look, I know that people look at the end-to-end supply chain, but for us, the only thing we're optimizing is the cost of in-house operations. So I would want to ask you, Matthias, where do you see the reasons that people might have problems seeing the bigger picture, as you obviously do by talking about even a cognitive supply chain?
And again, for us, it was also development, right? So we, as I said, we did also walk into more, at the beginning, we only optimized this perfect world process ourselves, right? Until we recognized that too many surprises cost us too much money, right, in the supply chain. So we adjusted, right? And I think this adjustment is always important. What we adjusting right now, when I talked about this, the third phase of cognitive supply chain, was that we recognized we had a lot of bottoms-up ideas, and that was good, right? People should get to know about the technologies and bring their innovations, and it provided us value, right? But then when it comes now to scaling, to really reach the next point, I think that's important, where supply chain leaders come into place. So we see now this, what we call chapter 2 now, is that we need to turn it around and combine bottoms up with really tops down. We need to, as a leadership team, now guide and develop that strategy and idea around like, so how do we reimagine our processes, right? How can we get the right people together to now say like, okay, as we have now more augmented users, right? Can we think about how these roles look like now in the future, right? Which processes are now enabled, right? How can I really change the way we work, right? How can I have intelligent workflows and this combination of automation on one side, but then augmentation on the other side? So I think this part, right, of you know, moving all those little pilots and ideas now into a strategy, that's a difficult one, right? And this is where again, our learning over the years helped me to and showing that there is value helped me now to get the organization behind that transformation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What I hear you say, Matthias, is that you first of all build some fundamental understanding for those who have to implement these things to know what one could envisage and imagine, and then you sort of experimented and refined and worked further. And what you're now saying, with that capability built into the organization, it becomes easier to go for more ambitious targets, more visionary redesigns. Is that what you say?
Exactly. Right. And as you go in little steps. You provide already value on your way. Right. Again, when we started, we didn't know that. Right. That we will lead into that point. So it was really a continuous learning. But after the fact, we see how we created in small steps value and brought this new world in little steps to the organization. But now it's really the time to then come and say, so what does it mean now? How can I really reimagine our workflows?
This is a little bit, you know, and I might get that wrong, a little bit in contradiction what I heard you say, Michael, because I think you cautioned us not to be sort of go out there and just follow some hype, which I completely get. But what I hear from Matthias is to say, but you do have to experiment with these things, because if you don't get your hands dirty, then you will not build those capabilities you need to have the basic backbone for redesign.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Sure. And I think in all fairness, then also, I have to acknowledge, and personally the first to say, we're talking IBM here, and there's a certain tendency to have an experimental perspective to using these technologies. At the same time, we're not naive. It's also about capital that needs to be provided in order to test out and not lose temper if things don't immediately materialize. And I think, Matthias, you said it also when we last spoke. One of the learnings is for leaders and everyone else involved, you need time for these technologies. The thing about the hype is something that has to do with our own attention, I think. We hear a lot about these technologies. We heard a lot about a lot of marketing around pilot projects in big conglomerates. When it doesn't work that well anymore, you don't hear about them anymore, which does not necessarily mean they're still on a prosperity path. Some of them actually die away. And here is the word of caution was meant in a sense that the years of just experimenting, we believe, is over. We're still experimenting as we're learning, but learning and experimenting, I think, is, goes hand in hand. But right now, these technologies are all there. What we look at is a differentiating random evolution, as you can see on the slide, and strategic execution. So how many pilot projects on different technologies can a company afford? And this is what we see. Sometimes I was doing a workshop with the client. We were talking about the big deficiency in master data management and even inconsistency in managing the access rights to maintaining master data, while at the same time there was a presentation on robotic process automation. And these things do not naturally fit together very well. Yeah. So if you've got a gap here, you should know what else you could do. And this is what we believe needs to be streamlined, because those that know better and have a good understanding will have an advantage in competition.
This very much, the master data access rights very much resonates with me. Many cooks destroy the cake or the meal. We have another question. Abdullah asks, what do you think about the available platform nowadays? Which one do you see as most appropriate for supply chain 4.0? Now, as a procurement guy, I have to say we will not make any product recommendations, but of course, we can talk about the principles of selection here. Matthias, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's a very open question though, right? Because first of all, Industry 4.0 is very wide, right? And then again, depending really what do you want to support, which decisions do you want to support with that Industry 4.0 platform, right? And that's again, I think that really leads you into the platforms. The good thing is that there are platforms out there, right? And you can see like that you don't have to develop all the stuff yourself, right? And that's one of the key kind of directions we give into our organization, is that as long as you stay on those platforms, right, you can bring the different ideas and innovation and solutions into the organization. So really, it helped me on the transformation. I'm really hesitant to talk about now specific products here. As I said, because I don't know your supply chain and really the needs of what you want to achieve or which decisions you want to support with that platform, right? So
this is by the way, actually, I think when we get into a council meeting, which is different from a webcast like this, where we have chat about rules, and then we can, of course, more directly deal with that. We also have a featured format which is called peer assist. So someone raises a question like that, and the peers in the council meeting will then give their views and their experience, and it's basically then a crowdsourcing of solutions. But I don't want to exclude Michael from that question. You have any points of view on how to approach a selection process like that?
Maybe just to take that question, you responded, I mean, for the webcast, it's very clear, and Matthias said it as well, we're not giving direct product recommendations. But I'd like to take that question also to emphasize on the fact that the research on any of the offerings, even any of the digital technologies that make a substantial part of the digital supply chain transformation, is not what we would cover in detail and kind of educating ourselves on blockchain and 3D printing or machine learning. We believe the research on this, and there is enough sources for insight, are well provided. It's commonplace. But as you've seen in this webcast, we're more about sharing the experiences from making the first steps, experimenting, and also helping each other to avoid the big mistakes. Because it's a bit like new methodologies being implemented in companies, and some may align that with the thoughts on business process management as well, or enterprise architecture. If it doesn't work instantly, you may leave burnt ground, and that is what we would like to help attendees to avoid. Yeah. So learning from each other and avoiding the biggest mistakes and grabbing the best opportunities in a proper way.
Thank you. I mean, I'm very pleased to have both of you here. You, Michael, in your coming role as the moderator and council director of this new council, and you, Matthias, as one of the founding members there. And I must say that you guys have just sort of, how shall I put this, put my mind a little bit more at ease, because I think it is a huge and vast and complex area, and one can easily get lost. And I think there's a lot of noise out there in the world about this. And so, for example, one guy said to me, don't talk to me about supply chain. I want to start a manufacturing with that. And these are aspects and discussions that we need to do. And I've just seen with the two of you, I already get more clarity in this field. So that is extremely encouraging. Michael, you want to briefly say how you want, where you want this council to go, so that people who are listening to us can understand what this is all about. And by the way, I would like to also point out, we weren't able to cover any of these many aspects in any detail. This is for future work and for future council meetings and future webcasts and podcasts and blog entries as well. But if you have burning questions now, either for Michael or for Matthias, or be it for me, then please feel free to send them to us, and we will endeavor to answer them to you. Also, you've seen in the chat box Effie's email address. She's very happy to get in touch with you and coordinate any questions you might have. But Michael, tell us a little bit about your vision for the council.
Thank you, Uwe. And looking at the time, then that gives me the opportunity to make a plea and invite you, if you are listening into this webcast and you have made the first step into testing, trialing, experimenting with digital technologies to transform your supply chains, then you are a candidate to come to the council as a founding member and help us in balancing both give and take insights and learnings from a peer-to-peer perspective. So we're looking for experienced leaders in transformation roles in their companies, and that is across industries. We can emphasize it's vendor-free and consultant-free, so we're looking at practitioners at most. And if you're interested, help us, help yourselves in moving forward in a structured approach to transforming your supply chains in using digital technologies, then contact us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Matthias, would you like to say a couple of words about your perspective on the future work we want to do together?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, today I shared in a few minutes what we have done, and of course I'm looking forward in the council to learn from my peers, right? A lot of ideas which I have in mind and are not finalized, right? And I'm really looking forward to have this discussion and experience from others. And you said it, Uwe. I think not everybody of us needs to go through each single test. It would be really a shortcut if I understand from others what worked and what didn't work too. And I think that's really my motivation, and I'm really looking forward to that council.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both of you. As I said, it was a big learning exercise for me, and I hope for the audience as well. Let me just point out the next webcast coming up in our series of Sustainability Watch is the unpacking of Chinese waste plastic ban. and the implications for business. A lot of us are influenced in one way or another by this. And the conference board has done an extensive study based on the experience of our China center. So I think that's interesting. I'm conscious that it's very close to Christmas, so I still hope you find the time in your busy preparations there. My last plea to the audience is, could you please tell us about your feedback, because it helps us to improve this sort of webcast to get a better service to you. Thank you so much for your attendance, and all the best.
Thank you.